The staff at the restaurant declined to serve the police officer when she entered one morning. They had no idea that they were going to get some delicious justice. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. In Alexandria, Virginia, one morning, a police officer dressed in full costume went about her work as she would have any other day. There are new dangers, difficulties, or accomplishments every day, yet this officer experienced none of them. She lived, really, accepting each day as it came. An average workday for this officer would consist of patrols as usual, maybe 2 or 3 traffic citations to impatient vehicles, and maybe mediating conflicts between irate neighbors. This police officer always made sure to uphold the fundamental principles of her line of work in all she performed. Therefore, regardless of the setting, a restaurant, a grocery shop, or any other place, she made sure to project fortitude, tolerance, and honesty. She had even developed positive relationships with locals as a result of this. But as this policeman quickly found out, perhaps not all of them, this investigator was still having a great time at work that day, almost noon. She had no idea that her day would soon take a turn for the worst and that she would soon find herself in a precarious situation that would eventually make headlines. After the routine run-ins that evening, this investigator was exhausted and ravenous when he suddenly had a taste for noodles for supper. She convinced herself she could devour a whole bowl of noodles at that very moment since she was so hungry. So she got in her car and headed to Duke Street, where the Neighborhood Noodles and Company restaurant was located. She had been to the restaurant a few times and had even appreciated the service, but this evening was nothing like the previous times she had been. She was relieved that there wasn't a large line when she arrived, but waiting for her turn required every bit of patience. Before it was her turn, a group of patrons, who appeared to be a family, were waiting to be served. Everything appeared normal at first, but this detective was startled to see a chef emerge from the register and approach the cashier. The investigator didn't even use her police senses to sense that something wasn't right based on the way the cook was staring. Even a layperson would have been able to see it. She pointed at the policeman and informed the cashier, "You better remove me off the line because I am not serving that." This officer was quite bewildered, even though she had seen the chef gesturing at her. She spun around, thinking the cook could be talking about someone else. She was certain it was her, though, because as she swung sideways, all eyes were on her. The policewoman assumed that since she was wearing a uniform, she was being treated horribly even though she wasn't sure what she had done to warrant it. However, when was it ever against the law to serve those wearing uniforms? As far as this police officer was aware, none. But the whole thing became even more pitiful with what followed. The cook and the cashier burst out laughing when they realized how badly their remarks had hurt the officer. This police officer understood she had to use all she had taught to stop the situation from getting worse, even though her response would annoy almost everyone. It was all she could do not to make a scene. "I guess you don't want my money then," she finally concluded, and turned to walk away. The cook and the cashier laughed some more as she left, obviously enjoying the misery they had given the officer. They had no idea that their deeds would soon leave them with a bad taste in their mouths. She wasn't finished with the situation. Even when the police officer left without even collecting the noodles she had come for, she was aware that she had to exact justice. She told her boss, Police Chief Earl Cook, everything that had transpired when she returned to work. Earl wasn't happy with how she was handled. Well, as a police officer, rage is your natural reaction. Your initial reaction is anger, which is understandable given the terrible circumstances we are in right now with our relationships with everyone and the needless treatment of one of my officers. After hearing about her suffering, Earl advised the investigator, "Then you come down a bit." But even he was taken aback when the detective informed him that she had departed without giving her opinion. He gave her a lot of credit for managing the issue well and refraining from confronting the staff, which would have led to an unwarranted uproar from the locals. However, he couldn't help but question why, given the police's positive connections with the local populace and businesses, such an unpleasant situation had to occur. He quickly contacted the restaurant after listening to the investigator, and the manager verified that the tragic tragedy had definitely occurred. They also apologized and said they would investigate the matter. The public was in favor of what they ultimately accomplished as promised, The restaurant looked into the matter and determined that the employees were at fault. Following that, they issued an official statement outlining the steps they took to guarantee the employees weren't left unpunished. Neither the corporation nor the other employees at the Duke Street store endorsed the opinions or behavior of these people, which were unacceptable. After coming to the conclusion that the two concerned team members behaved inappropriately, we promptly fired them. We cherish the relationship we have developed over the years with the local Alexandria Police Department and have the highest regard for law enforcement personnel, they stated. The public and media began to pay close attention to the news very quickly. Nearly all of them had something to say. Some residents, however, viewed it as an ideal chance to attack the eatery in order to exact revenge on them for employing subpar employees. Apart from the police's prompt intervention, nobody knows how things may have ended. They told the public via all of their social media platforms that they would not support any property destruction. This tactic was effective, and the enraged mob decided to give up. Alexandria Police Union spokesman Pete Feltham said that the restaurant shouldn't be held accountable for the deeds of a select few. Having stated so, he praised the eatery for its complete cooperation with the authorities. But they weren't the only persons that responded to this occurrence. Alexandria Mayor Allison Silverberg was also made aware of it. The actions taken by Noodles & Company to make amends also pleased her. We value Noodles & Company's prompt, comprehensive reaction and heartfelt apologies for this regrettable circumstance. We are certain that this was an isolated incident and does not represent the firm or its other dedicated workers, after having a lengthy discussion with the company's regional and national leadership. I also think the company shouldn't be judged because of the errors of a few staff members, and it's a good thing they got fired, the statement said, fortunately coming at a time when the company was already getting multiple negative reviews and helping to restore its reputation. That, in my opinion, would teach others a lesson to ensure that anything similar doesn't happen again. The eatery went one step farther and posted placards announcing its support for the cops on its doors. Following the narrative, I couldn't help but have a lot of questions. What if the cashier and the cook had behaved differently? Perhaps they would still be employed, though. Additionally, they would have prevented the retaliation that their acts must have caused for their friends and family. Who knows what happens when we leave our houses? People who would deliberately irritate us could come across. Never forget that it is best to let an unpleasant situation alone, since you never know what can happen after. If the chef at a restaurant declined to serve you, how would you respond? This 13-year-old youngster borrowed a bike from his pal and then vanished without explanation. What transpired following his discovery at a hospital 5 days later is described here. Just 2 days before Halloween, Angelica Martinez received a heartbreaking call regarding her brother's disappearance. Nathan Torres got on the red bicycle of a family friend and rode out to the store. Unfortunately, he had a terrible incident prior to arriving. A few minutes after he rode off, the small kid was struck by a car, according to police records. In Hemet, California, the tragedy occurred within a quarter mile from his home. His family became really concerned when he failed to return home. Initially, they believed he could have gone to a friend's house, but as a day passed and he was still absent, they became concerned that they would not see the young adolescent ever again. Angelica Martinez, his older sister, searched the internet for any information on her brother's disappearance. "We were prepared for the worst, so I went online. A child who disappears may have been abducted or duped into meeting someone online," she added. The next day, October 30th, Angelica's single mother went ahead and reported the incident to the police. All of her and her mother's attempts to locate her brother were fruitless, including calling acquaintances, looking in other places, and even attempting to monitor his phone. They were unaware that Nathan had been in an accident that left him with a serious brain damage. Sad, huh? After that, the 13-year-old was brought to Moreno Valley Hospital for medical attention. The adult ICU at Riverside Health System had him categorized as John Doe, since they didn't know who he was. The nurses and physicians mistook him for a 20-year-old boy. The hospital issued a statement on the upsetting event, but it withheld details regarding the adolescent boy's condition. Since he had changed his identity, neither his family nor the police could figure out where he was. However, how did his identity get confused? The reason for this was the distinction between their residence and the scene of the accident. Angelica claims that although they officially reside in Hemet, her mother actually resides on the boundary between Hemet and San Jacinto. On the other hand, her brother's accident is thought to have occurred in San Jacinto, around 3 blocks from her mother's residence. This was the point of failure, since her mother had reported Nathan's missing case to the Hemet Police Department rather than the San Jacinto police. Angelica was astonished that Hemet authorities were unable to identify her son, but she quickly realized that her mother had explicitly informed them that her son was riding a red Gauntlet bike when he was last seen. 5 days later, Nathan was finally recognized by the police. After seeing the missing boy's report, a Riverside sheriff's officer contacted the boy's family to let them know that the John Doe at Riverside Medical Center was actually Nathan Torres. Is that really true? Angelica claims that an officer arrived at her mother's house carrying a photo of her adolescent brother who was hospitalized. Her family's hearts were broken when they learned what had happened to Nathan. The Hemet Police Department issued a statement on the missing youngster the same day. Hemet PD followed up with hospitals in the region and made contact with them. The adolescent was hospitalized as a John Doe, so even though other hospitals were called, they were unable to identify him. Angelica thought her brother's case might have been handled more skillfully by the Hemet police. She said that the Hemet Police Department had been approached by the Riverside Police Department many times to inquire about any missing people who fit their description, but they had never responded. The Hemet Police Department declined to comment when asked why it took so long to locate Nathan, but they did wish him a speedy recovery. "I'm just happy they found him." The adolescent boy's sister was very appreciative of the Riverside Police Department officer in San Jacinto for making the greatest effort to locate her brother. She never held the hospital accountable for anything and was also appreciative of them for admitting him. The family was pleased that they had taken care of her younger brother, since this was what was intended of them. Thankfully, Nathan's family discovered him in good time. They simply prayed he would survive and broke down in tears when they saw him. Had he not been found, the adolescent may have died. His sister was especially upset since she was separated from her brother at the time of the unfortunate incident. Her brother's health began to worsen while she was there, so she made the decision to stay with him in the hospital. She was terrified because of this. "He was doing great, and then all of a sudden we were losing him," she explained. The doctors told them that the pressure within his brain was supposed to be rising, not falling, yet it was becoming worse. By now, Nathan was critically ill and in need of immediate surgery. The youngster, unconscious, had surgery and luckily recovered. For safety reasons, his skull had to be removed, but now he had an opportunity to live. His family was informed by the surgical staff that the reconstruction of his skull would need around 3 months. But a startling miracle took place. 3 weeks following surgery, Nathan's family was thrilled to learn that he had recovered his skull. Amazing, huh? Even though he still had some more damages, at this point his swelling had subsided and his health had much improved. Because of the swelling and damage to his brain, he was placed in a medically induced coma to some extent. Nathan, nevertheless, is a warrior, and he overcame it in the end. His family was now able to discern whether he was awake or asleep. His neurosurgeons thought he could understand, but they weren't sure whether he comprehended them when they spoke to him. But he was not very responsive to orders. For Nathan's mother, who already has an 8-year-old daughter with special needs, his circumstances were particularly challenging. She now had to look after them both because of what happened to him. How difficult must this be for the boy's mother? She says she's simply glad to have him back and that she thinks he will get better, despite the hardship. The 14-year-old is unable to remove the fluid from his head on his own at this time. In order to breathe, he also has to utilize a tracheostomy tube, a ventilator, and a feeding tube. This teenage lad really has a long way to go before he returns home. Angelica claims that her family has made the decision to sue the motorist who struck Nathan. They were just unable to deal with the suffering the incident had brought them after seeing the car drive by. They are only now concerned about her brother's health because they realize they must accept what has occurred. To ensure that the Hemet adolescent receives all the assistance he requires, his family has launched a GoFundMe campaign. In order for her mother to stay in a motel near the hospital while Nathan is there, Angelica hopes that others will be able to assist them. In addition, she hopes that a portion of the funds will go toward meeting his other needs and remodeling their home for him when he returns. Nathan's family was notified by the physicians that they were uncertain about Nathan's prognosis. They helped them realize that since brain injuries may occur in both directions, anything might happen. However, Nathan has so far exceeded the expectations of his physicians, and his family is optimistic that he will recover more fully than they anticipate. Since this is his greatest opportunity, his family is overjoyed that he will soon be leaving for the Loma Linda Recovery Facility. Nathan's sister wants everyone to know that prayers are what her family most needs for her younger brother. She knows her mother would value prayers more than money, and she thinks they will keep him strong. She just posted some images of her brother, who is on the mend and will soon return home. She expressed her gratitude to everybody who prayed and supported him. How do you feel about Nathan's narrative? Let me know in the comments. Until we meet again. Situated on the border of two states, the Thousand Islands National Park has 2,000 square miles of breathtaking scenery. These 1,864 islets are haphazardly arranged in the center of the massive St. Lawrence River. Their sizes differ, some islands being so little that there can only be 2 trees on them. Tour guides are happy to discuss the histories and even secrets of each island, though. This location, which is listed as a unique phenomenon in the biosphere and is protected by UNESCO, is the most popular destination for those who enjoy ecotourism. The Thousand Islands are a remarkable natural feature that spans 80 kilometers along the St. Lawrence River, between Canada and the United States of America. It's one of the world's most breathtaking locations and merits particular consideration. After all, one wonders how this is possible when taking in its splendor from an aerial perspective. Not only are these locations incredibly attractive, but nearly every one of them is inhabited. The islands are an exception with their extremely small area. A parcel of land with at least 1 tree on it that is surrounded by water 365 days a year is considered an island, as per the guidelines and standards established in the area. Consequently, there are 1,864 islands in the archipelago known as the Thousand Islands. The tour guides enthusiastically recount a folktale from the area that is meant to explain why there is such a gorgeous natural riot in the middle of the river. It claims that these locations were the scene of an ancient event when the gods could either punish humans harshly for disobedience or persistent conflict, or show them pity. The formation of the archipelago is actually more mundane and normal for Mother Nature. Located thousands of years above sea level, this region is a portion of the Canadian Crystalline Shield, which has been eroded by the swift circulation of a glacier that is melting. The water just wore away at the hard rock over many millennia, creating a little elevated area and filled the lowlands with its stream. The peaks developed a thick layer of flora over time, transforming into a stunning archipelago. This explains why the islands differ from one another and have different sizes. These locations, of course, were the source of ongoing disputes and altercations between the two nations. However, by the middle of the 1800s, the parties reached an agreement, and as of right now, Canada owns 2/3 of the archipelago, with the USA owning the remaining portion. The archipelago gradually rose to prominence at the start of the 20th century as one of the most sought-after destinations for travel and leisure. Like mushrooms, country cottages, hotels, and inns catering to various groups of people and tourists started sprouting up on the islands. These establishments were extremely popular with fishermen, hunters, and anybody looking for an amazing getaway. Divers are drawn to this location like a magnet because of the intricate underwater array of rocky remnants and the relatively good depth, which in some spots exceeds 65 meters. These depths are today regarded as the greatest freshwater reserve in the world for sophisticated underwater investigation, since they conceal the debris of several ships, schooners, and yachts that sunk in varying years, sometimes even centuries ago. For this reason, the local government alerts owners of large boats to the danger of tempting fate at night so they don't end up like those exhibits that are already at the bottom of the river. It is important to exercise utmost caution during the day. A number of islands are currently very well liked among ecotourism aficionados, and researchers are learning fascinating things about them. Deer Island, purchased for a mere $175 in 1876, this island was given right away to Skull and Bones, the most covert Masonic lodge. Enthusiasts of all things enigmatic, who love conjecturing, are certain that this secret society controls the whole planet. By the way, a lot of people think that this is where the conspiracy strands were all sewn together more than a century ago. Hart Island. George Bolt, a multimillionaire who came to the United States from Germany at the age of 14 as a young man without resources and no connections, achieved great financial success. He just fell in love with these amazing locations, leading him to purchase one of the United States' largest and most stunning islands in the archipelago. He started erecting a castle for his cherished bride and gave his new property the name Hart Island. Wolf Island, which stretches over 9 kilometers in breadth and 29 kilometers in length, is the biggest island in the archipelago. It still goes by Wolf Island and is home to almost 1,400 people. The adjacent island of Carlton is a great place for history buffs to explore the remnants of Fort Haldimand, which was built by the British in 1779. Tourists are fascinated by its incredible narrative since in 1812 this defensive fortress collapsed in a foolish and even disgusting manner, and just 3 American troops managed to seize it. Dark Island. This island is well known for housing the Singer Corporation's famous castle, which is accessible to visitors and a must-see on all excursions. In addition to taking in the opulent apartment decor, everyone may enjoy taking photographs against the stunning backdrop of historic buildings and the surrounding countryside. Hub Island. With a surface area of about 306 square meters, this island is said to be the smallest in the world to support human habitation. In 1950, the Sizeland family constructed a remote home on the rocky terrain as a place to retreat from the hustle and bustle of society. Because they were still able to fit their home and a tiny open space for outdoor leisure, they named their construct Just Enough Room. They still have to dream of isolation and tranquility, though, for every day, large groups of visitors pass by the estate and continuously capture everything with video cameras and snap photos. International Bridge of the Thousand Islands. The International Bridge, which linked the two nations in 1938, is perhaps the main draw across the entire expansive island. Tourists really enjoy this bridge despite the fact that it is the shortest in the world that connects 2 states, since during construction, observation towers were built that offer an incredible view of the entire region. On our world, there are a lot of genuinely terrible islands where the very terrain appears to make blood freeze in veins, in addition to lovely islands that captivate with their breathtaking beaches and scenery. These islands are a tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors with their unique mysteries and tales. I appreciate you seeing. Would you kindly like and post the video on social media? We'll respond to you as soon as we can. He made a choice after his girlfriend abandoned him after he returned from the army in a wheelchair. You're going to hear a really extraordinary story. Come along till the very end of this video to find out why. My name is Emmanuel, and I entered primary school many years ago, which is when my narrative really started. I met Daniela, a female there. Of all of them, she was the most gorgeous. It was great to have her at my side. We laughed and played together, and when we became older, I went home with her after school. She did it nearly every day, and because her house was nearby to mine, I would go see her on the weekends. To be honest, I was grateful for the times I could spend with her. She once said that she wanted to be a nurse when I asked her once, "What would you like to be when you grow up?" She then asked me the same question again, to which I replied, "I want to be a general and a great soldier like my grandfather. My goal is to defend and serve my nation." She only grinned while gazing at me. Daniela started to feel a part of me. You know, one of the individuals I missed the most was my grandfather. He passed away while I was little. His likeness has always been my goal. I recall Daniela being teased by some of the other students in the classroom. They continued to tease her even after I tried to defend her from their tugging of her hair. I finally got into an argument with the kids. They summoned my grandfather and brought me before the principal. As soon as he arrived, the manager angrily told him to make sure that this wouldn't happen again, or else I would be ejected from the school, and that it would be preferable to speak with me about it or take action against me. With a simple nod, my grandfather gave him his word that it wouldn't happen again. I thought my grandfather would chastise me or scream at me when we got outside. He was taking things quite seriously. As we were sitting on a seat in a park, his expression abruptly altered. All he did was grin and stroke my hand. He said that my actions were right, that it was cowardly for anybody to harm a lady, and that only we have to defend them. However, time goes on without pause. We grew up together and started high school, but all of a sudden I felt something really unique for Daniela. I wanted her to be someone else in my life since I no longer regarded her as a friend. I was unsure of how to come clean since I didn't want to jeopardize our friendship. But I told her all I was feeling one day. I was no longer able to disguise it. She gave me a long look before giving me a strong hug. Her response was simply, "Yes, I want to be with you." She was unaware of my happiness that day. I will always remember that day as significant in my life. We were teenagers, barely 14 years old. You know, even though there were times when I respected her more than others, I always respected her. However, I remained determined to become a soldier, which meant I would need to relocate to a different place for my training after graduation. I thus informed her that I still intended to become a soldier before that occurred. She was frightened anything would happen to me, which is why she did not take it well at first. Secondly, she did not want to be apart from me. In response, I said she was welcome to come see me so we could talk. The fear was far greater. She informed me that this was not a game and that she would want to give it some thought. But I wanted to go on. I wanted to help my nation. But to me too, she was everything. I should have listened to her maybe, but I didn't. A couple more years passed, and we graduated from high school. Daniela signed up at the city's university. I opted to become a soldier, whereas she wanted to become a nurse. That day finally came. She went with me to the railway station. She sobbed and gave me a hard embrace. I gave her a hug and a kiss on the forehead. I recall having to be to the military installation the same day at night. Like myself, there were many of boys who aspired to achieve their goals. I got to know a few friends. In all honesty, I was ecstatic. This was the start of my dreams. It was really difficult at first, but with time, I grew accustomed to it. Every weekend, Daniela and my mother came to see me. Of course, I spoke with her on the phone as well, and I messaged Daniela nonstop. I have to say, I really missed her. All was well until the day the thing she feared most occurred. It had happened that day, but I had done it before with no issues. It was rather early. The plan was to board a chopper and do a parachute jump. We did one by one. The final one was me. Everything went smoothly. My parachute opened as it should have, but I lost control due to a powerful wind blow. I hit the ground, and my body let out a few meters of bounce. I was out cold. Actually, I don't recall anything about what happened. All I know is that the hospital is where I woke up. I discovered that I had made it through a several-meter fall. Daniela had visited my house that day and gone inside, but no one was there. She called my mother as a result, but she didn't answer. She so went back to her job at the hospital. She was not aware that her phone was ringing. My mother was attempting to inform her of what had occurred, but she remained silent. Eventually, she was able to get in touch with my mom and find out about my injury. She then proceeded directly to the hospital. When she came to see me the next day, the doctor told me something that put a stop to my dreams. I would never be able to walk. He informed me that no procedure could improve my condition and that I should return home to relax. I saw Daniela's and my mother's faces, and I didn't want them to think poorly of me. I was contemplating the future 2 days ago, and now I was destined for a wheelchair. Daniela used to see me every day, but I soon observed that she was starting to arrive late. I wondered whether it was related to her employment. She told me she needed to talk to me one day when she came to visit me. She refused to go into the home, even though I had promised. She told me she was only stopping over to tell me something and didn't have much time. "Emmanuel, you were a very good man," she said, and I heard every word. Even though I've known you since I was very little, I believe it's time to say goodbye for good. You're not the man I pictured spending my entire life with, but that was then. Calling me won't go through since I won't answer. That put me in a foul mood. I believed that my life had come to an end. When I tried to get out of the chair and onto the bed one day, I could feel my legs moving with me. I went to the physician and explained the situation to him. Even though he told me that shouldn't be possible, I didn't buy it. When I begged him to send a nurse to try with me every day, I was introduced to Paula, a therapist who gave me the impression that I wasn't a bother. I screamed at her a lot when I was really upset. I told her it was all a waste of time, but she persuaded me that if you truly desire anything in life, nothing is impossible. She gradually altered my perspective on the world. Things do occasionally happen for a purpose. I could finally wiggle my toes one day. It was unbelievable. All of my hard work was paying off, but there was still a long way to go. Paula was a big assistance to me throughout that period, and I experienced a lot of emotion when I was eventually able to take my first steps. I was so overcome with emotion that I gave Paula a joyful embrace and kiss on the spur of the moment. She hugged me close and gave me another kiss, but I eventually realized what was happening and wanted to go. I had the impression that life was giving me another opportunity at that point. We started going out, taking walks, and having a great time ever since. She helped me rediscover my self-worth and restored my sense of hope, joy, and love. But then, a year later, there was a knock on my door. Daniela was standing in front of me when I opened it. Even though I was using crutches to prevent myself from collapsing, I can still picture her shocked expression when she saw me standing there. She said, "How is this possible?" in awe at that same moment. "Even though the doctor claimed you wouldn't walk again, you're walking." I pulled her away as she tried to hug me. I was in error. I heard her remark, "I want everything to go back to how it was before." Silently staring at her, I recalled her final words as she dropped me to the ground. "I don't want an incomplete man," so I decided to leave. An unfinished woman is not what I desire. Do you know why? I was aware that at trying circumstances, that lady may turn on me once more. I appreciate you seeing. Would you kindly like and post the video on social media? We'll respond to you as soon as we can. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.